Have you ever found yourself at the edge of your patience, as if a single word or action could tip you over? It's as if patience, that one virtue everyone praises, is always just out of reach when we need it most. We're told to just be patient, as though it's easy, as if patience were something you could switch on with the push of a button. But patience is not something we're simply born with or without. It's a profound practice, a skill we build with understanding and intention. What if patience could feel less like an exhausting test and more like an inner strength, a genuine source of peace no matter what comes your way? Today, we're exploring patience from a Buddhist perspective, learning why Buddha considered it a powerful, transformative practice and how we can cultivate it to weather any storm with grace. Imagine not being easily shaken, handling difficult situations with resilience, and letting go of frustration. This is what true patience can offer us, and in this video, I'll walk you through practical insights to help bring this quality alive in your life. In Buddhism, patience is more than simply waiting it out or forcing ourselves to stay calm. It's an active strength that arises from deep understanding. Buddha himself called patience one of the highest virtues, an extraordinary quality that anchors us even when life feels unpredictable. Unlike common ideas of patience as merely enduring hardship or staying quiet to avoid confrontation, Buddhist patience is an empowering practice that invites us to work with our thoughts and emotions and see beyond the immediate challenges in front of us. In Buddha's teachings, patience is described as the ability to withstand discomfort, criticism, or anger without letting it disturb our peace. Imagine being in a situation where someone's words sting, but instead of reacting or harboring resentment, you respond with compassion and understanding. True patience doesn't require us to suffer through, but to actively engage with our experiences, learning to respond with awareness and kindness, not out of a sense of weakness, but out of strength. Patience in Buddhism is a form of inner resilience, not passivity. It's an invitation to transform how we experience difficulty, guiding us to cultivate a grounded, compassionate approach to life's ups and downs. While it's easy to talk about patience, the real test lies in practice. In Buddha's view, patience goes beyond theory or advice. It's something we nurture by facing real challenges and making conscious choices in response. For instance, think about situations where you feel criticized or misunderstood. Our natural impulse might be to defend ourselves or react with anger. But Buddha's teachings offer us an alternative. Patience is about meeting these moments with an open heart and clear mind, understanding that anger only deepens our own suffering. Often, we mistake fear or avoidance for patience. We might keep silent or wait it out, not because we're genuinely calm, but because we feel powerless or afraid to confront the situation. This, according to Buddha, isn't true patience. True patience is rooted in inner strength, the kind that allows us to remain calm and compassionate even when we're fully capable of reacting. Picture a strong individual faced with a weaker opponent. They could easily retaliate, but out of wisdom, they choose not to. This choice isn't made from fear or helplessness, but from an awareness that reacting with anger serves no purpose. This is the kind of patience Buddha encouraged, a choice made from strength and understanding. Real patience grows in those moments when we can choose to act but consciously decide not to harm. It's the conscious decision to put peace above pride, understanding over immediate reaction. Buddha offered us a profound framework for cultivating patience through the three marks of existence: impermanence, suffering, and non-self. Let's look at how these principles can be a roadmap for patience in our lives. Impermanence, anicca. Everything in life is constantly changing. This is a core Buddhist teaching. When someone's words or actions upset us, the immediate sting feels permanent, as though it will last forever. But if we recognize that all things, including hurtful words, are fleeting, we can let go more easily. For example, the next time someone speaks harshly, consider that the words are already gone the moment they're spoken. We often replay them in our minds, feeding our anger. But when we understand that those words are transient, we can choose not to hold on to the pain they caused. This awareness of impermanence allows us to release our anger and embrace patience. Suffering. Dukkha. Suffering is an inevitable part of life. Rather than trying to avoid it, Buddhism teaches us to accept suffering as a shared human experience. When we understand that life naturally includes discomfort, frustration, and adversity, we no longer feel blindsided by these experiences. This awareness prepares us to handle challenges with patience, knowing they're a part of life's ebb and flow. The next time you feel your patience tested by a difficult person or situation, remember that suffering connects us to each other. You're not alone in feeling frustration. It's a universal experience. This understanding can soften our impatience and foster compassion instead. Non-self, anatta. Not everything that happens is personal. Often, we think someone's words or actions are an attack on us, but most of the time, they're reacting to their own struggles. The teachings on non-self remind us that we're not always at the center of every situation. The world doesn't revolve around our desires, and we're not in control of everything. When we let go of the belief that everything happens to us, we open up space for patience to grow. The less we cling to our need for control, the easier it becomes to let go of frustration and respond with patience. Seeing life through these three principles, impermanence, suffering, and non-self, gives us the clarity to soften our reactions, allowing patience to naturally arise. By understanding that each moment is temporary, that suffering is part of the journey, and that we're not the center of every conflict, we can let go of anger and resentment more readily. Imagine you're in a situation where you're stuck in traffic or dealing with someone who criticizes you unfairly. Our instinct might be to react with impatience or frustration, but these are perfect opportunities to practice Buddhist patience. In the traffic example, we might ask ourselves, is my impatience helping me? Will it change the traffic situation? Probably not. Recognizing the impermanence of the moment can help ease our frustration, allowing us to relax rather than fume. Or let's say a friend makes a hurtful comment. Often, we replay these words, feeding our anger. But what if, instead, we took a step back and remembered that those words are gone, impermanent, and perhaps spoken in a moment of their own suffering? By acknowledging this, we can respond with understanding, practicing patience instead of letting anger consume us. Buddhist patience doesn't mean tolerating harmful behavior or allowing ourselves to be mistreated. Rather, it means responding with awareness and compassion. We might still address the issue, but we do so from a place of peace, not from a reactionary stance. Each moment of patience we practice is a step closer to a life filled with inner calm. Much of our impatience comes from wanting to control everything, to have every interaction, outcome, and moment go exactly as we wish. But Buddha teaches us that control is often an illusion. Life unfolds in ways we can't predict or dictate, and the more we cling to the need for control, the more frustrated we become. When we let go of this need, patience becomes natural because we're no longer resisting the natural flow of life. Imagine you're dancing with a partner, and every move is spontaneous. You don't control each step. Instead, you allow yourself to flow with the music. Patience is like that, a dance with life where we stop resisting and start moving gracefully with whatever comes. In practicing this release, we discover a patience rooted not in passivity but in wisdom. When we release the need to control, we allow ourselves to be present, open, and calm. This practice doesn't mean we stop caring, it means we stop clinging. In this way, patience becomes a source of resilience, allowing us to navigate life's unpredictability with grace and confidence. The Buddhist path to patience isn't about suppressing anger or waiting passively for things to improve. It's about embracing each moment with a conscious choice, choosing peace over conflict and clarity over judgment. When we cultivate patience, we're building inner strength that allows us to face any challenge without losing ourselves. Patience becomes a way of transforming anger and frustration into understanding. It gives us the courage to see beyond immediate discomfort and approach life's difficulties with compassion. As you go forward, try to see each moment of irritation or frustration as a chance to practice patience, to consciously choose a path of peace. Next time you find yourself growing impatient, ask yourself, what bigger perspective can I hold here? Can I see this moment as temporary? Can I release my need to control? Each yes strengthens your practice of patience, bringing you closer to a life of inner calm and true freedom. So, how would your life change if patience became a core strength rather than a constant struggle? Imagine the freedom, the resilience, the peace that could come from this shift. If you're curious about more Buddhist practices for cultivating a peaceful mind, check out our video on mastering compassionate listening. It's an insightful journey that complements the art of patience, helping you connect deeply with yourself and others.